Math Workshop has truly transformed my teaching practice. Previously, when I used to teach full group, I was teaching with Heather Briggs at the time. We were co-teaching in the same classroom, and she was actually lead teaching math, and I was more of a support during math time. So she would be teaching the full team math instruction, and I would be going around and supporting all of the students and their needs. And I would notice that about a third of the class was bored. They were completely bored. They had already learned it. They already understand it. They were ready to move on. And another third was still completely lost, blank stares over their head, frustrated. And I noticed that she was really only teaching towards that middle third. And so we were talking and debriefing and reflecting, and we didn't know exactly what we needed to do, but we knew that we needed to change what we were doing. And so the summer came around, and we started brainstorming and looking at different blogs online and looking at different research that had been done with math instruction. And we saw a lot of talk about Math Workshop, and we hadn't really heard much about it before. But when we were researching it, we saw the data that supported it and some of the numbers that teachers had seen in their own individual classrooms, and it was mind-blowing. So after our first year of Math Workshop, we wanted to look at our numbers and our data to see if it was anywhere similar to the ones that we saw in the research online. And it was really shocking and in such a positive way. The national average for the NWEA at the time for math in 5th grade for the year is about 8 points per student on average, whereas after our first year of using Math Workshop was 13.5 points of growth per student. The students that year came in at a beginning of 5th grade level on average, right where they should be, and by the time they left us, the average in the spring was middle of 7th grade. So we were extremely pleased with the data from the very first year that we started it. One of the biggest perks of Math Workshop is having that small group instruction, that really nice teacher-student ratio of about 1 to 8. First of all, it allows all students to shine. I noticed that a lot of times my most struggling math students rarely speak up in math. They feel frustrated. They don't see themselves as a mathematician. But when they're in a group with students who are not going to overpower them, who are not going to just blurt out their answer or always raise their hand and be really kind of intimidating to these struggling math students, when they're in a group just by themselves, they have really no choice but to participate and dive in there. And I have never seen students transform from math haters to math lovers more than when we're using Math Workshop. I have one student who came in, she told me she did not like math. She was never going to like math. Every teacher tells her that they're going to make her like math, but they never had. So when I told her the same thing, she didn't believe me, and I said, you don't have to believe me. That's okay. I'm going to prove it to you. And within just a few months, she came up to me and she said, Mrs. Jahnke, I finally am starting to love math. And I was just that right there filled my heart with so much joy, and it made all of the struggle with implementing Math Workshop and the kicking off with that totally worth it. Another reason that small group instruction is really ideal is because as their teacher, I know exactly where every student is at. I'm able to see which students are struggling, which students get it, and the ways that they are struggling in it, the misconceptions that they have, more so than ever. When I only have about 8 to 12 kids in a class, I get to have every single student participate several times. Every day. Every student participates probably at least 5 times in class. Either it's saying something out loud or coming up to the board. So there's really no room for kids to sit back and sort of let others take charge. Everybody is engaged and involved. Another benefit that I notice with Math Workshop is that it fosters differentiated instruction. When I'm with just my 8 to 12 students in a group, I can slow things down or speed things up based on the needs that I see at that time. So no longer are my students getting bored because they're ready to move on, or getting frustrated because they can't keep up with their peers. It's finally that just right math for everyone. Oftentimes when people think about Math Workshop, they think of it as a structure, but really it's more of a philosophy. Math Workshop can look very different in every classroom. There's a variety of ways that you could decide to set up Math Workshop in your classroom, and it probably depends a lot on the students that you have and their needs or your personal style. the main philosophy, the main parts of math workshop, regardless of the structure that you set up, are things like self-direction, motivation, joyful rigor, inquiry, that math community and collaboration between the students, meeting individual student needs and differentiation, making it student-centered, giving students choice, having that intentional math talk. Those are all the different characteristics that really make math workshop. So whether you decide to do things like having a small group focus lesson or doing full group and then having centers after, or just those hands-on activities and interaction and collaboration, the structure is not what makes math workshop. The philosophy, that's what makes math workshop. So the way that I set up the structure for math workshop in my classroom is based on 4 daily rotations. The first rotation is a focus lesson. The focus lesson is the only time that I actually give instruction to the students. I no longer give full whole group instruction. I teach my lesson. I teach whatever the standards, the hardcore common core, as we call it, those standards in my focus lesson. This is when I'm giving the students new material and going through the curriculum. Another rotation always follows our focus lesson, and this is independent practice. In independent practice, they're really practicing those skills that they had just learned at our focus lesson so that they can practice for mastery. This is a time that it gives them a chance to work on their own to see if they've processed the information and their new learning, to be able to collaborate with a math partner and have that math conversation, math talk, that intentional math talk with somebody else, and really reflect and process all of the things that they've learned. Another rotation is problem solving. Our problem solving rotation is not based on what we're learning necessarily at that time, but it's those spiraled skills. It's hitting all of the skills throughout the year over and over again so that they're not forgetting the material that we've learned, and it's previewing them on information and new knowledge that we will be learning. Our final rotation is the technology rotation, and the technology rotation is able to really truly cater to individual needs in a way that us as humans, us teachers, can't possibly do. Whether it be Compass Learning or MobyMax or using your Google Classroom. There are so many different things that you can use to meet all of those unique individual needs. By doing this, you can fill in those holes that some students have from the previous grades, or push them ahead to standards that they might see in the future. And those are the 4 rotations that every student goes through every single day.